So, welcome to the Debatable Show, the podcast where we discuss hot topics in athletic training and AT Twitter. Welcome to a special episode that we have tonight. I'm Victoria Morris, and we are bringing you an episode on the ever popular and hot debate of safer sidelines. So for those of you tuning in for the first time, please make sure to follow us on Twitter at debatable_show. Again, that's at debatable_show. And then you can follow us on our personal Twitters. I'm at Morris_ATC, and my co-host M is under at MunsonBurnerATC. So we have those posted as a link on our websites and on our Twitter, so be sure to follow us there. We also have an Instagram account with the same exact handle at debatable_show. Each episode we record live shows, and you, the fans, can submit your questions or anything you'd like to talk about on the related topics. Don't forget to participate in the discussions, the polls, the questions, and any challenges we host each week. Who knows, you could even be featured on the show. So before we start, just a quick plug, as always. You guys know I love them. I love sunflower seeds. I'm a huge softball, baseball fan, but I hate that sandpaper feeling. So my go-to is Chinook Seedery's sunflower seeds. We have a link to a discount code to get 10% off your order of a sample pack on our Twitter, our Instagram, our podcast, and our blog pages. So be sure to check those out if you want to taste the best sunflower seeds in the country. And they're Texas-based. Next, if you'd like a free sticker sample pack from us, leave a review or a rating and take a screenshot of that review or rating and send it to our Twitter page. For those of you that have already done this, your stickers should have arrived. If they haven't, please let us know. If you don't want to leave a review or rating and you want to purchase said stickers, we have a Redbubble store set up. The link is in our account. So we're also asking any ATs out there, if you guys want to design a sticker and send it to us, 100% of the profits from that design sticker will go back to you, okay? So every purchase of every sticker helps us fund our show, and it gives away prizes such as NATA memberships that we did last year and will be doing again for next year, and as well as student memberships and prizes for graduating students. So again, like I said, today we're hosting a special episode with someone who's not an athletic trainer, but still fights and advocates for our profession probably more than some of us do. You may follow her on Twitter or have seen her most recently published article about the deaths of athletes. So please welcome Stephanie from the Courier Journal and introduce yourself, Stephanie.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And I'm obviously going to say that I love all things Texas-based. That's kind of where a lot of my passion for safer sidelines started. So more about me is I have probably met a lot of you throughout the country just because I've moved quite a bit. I was in newspapers originally in Oklahoma and Cincinnati or Cleveland, and then I moved to Texas, changed over to the TV industry, worked in Houston and then Cincinnati, and then just recently moved to Louisville almost a year ago now and flipped back into newspapers. So been on both sides of journalism and really just have had a blast kind of meeting everybody and just reporting on a topic that just, I truly believe just does not get enough coverage.
Speaking of a topic that hasn't gotten enough coverage, so I mean, us as athletic trainers, and then you having covered all the story, you see how many deaths there have been in the athletic realm. What got you as a non-athletic trainer into this? Like, what spurred the whole thing on?
So it seems to, like, when I look back on it, there's kind of like a couple things, right? It wasn't just one thing that I can say, just this thing made me keep going. But throughout my whole career, little things have come up. So the first one was my senior year of college. I was in a storytelling class and we read the Sports Illustrated article about Max Gilpin from Louisville titled "The Boy Who Died of Football." And I remember, the journalism nerd of me is like, I can still remember that the reporter got the scent of the girl's perfume, Max's girlfriend's perfume, and being like, wow, like, right? Details matter. And the non-journalism nerdy side of me, but the sports lover in me was like, this is a crazy story. Like, I haven't really heard a lot about high school kids just dropping dead from the heat. You hear about old people and babies left in cars, but not like high school athletes. That just seemed really, really weird. And I had a mentor who was amazing with me and just really taught me. His saying to me was, zig when everybody else zags. And so he used to tell me, like, can you find the story that everybody else isn't paying attention to? Maybe that's a story to like go follow. So then The following year after I read that story about Max, I was about to race my very first triathlon in my hometown, and I was so scared to do it. And there was a mom who was standing there, and to this day, she and I have really not talked a lot about it, but she had just lost her son to sudden cardiac arrest. He was playing football. He collapsed. And for some reason, she came and talked before the triathlon about how it's important to have heart screenings and things like that. And that ended up being Julie West, the mom of Jake West. So that was my own hometown that this happened in, right? And I remember my mom calling me and telling me about a kid who had died, but being there and seeing Julie in front of me was very impactful. And I remember thinking wait a minute, I read this story about this high school athlete that died in Louisville, and now this high school athlete collapsed and died from an unknown heart condition in my hometown. If it's happening in my hometown, it's got to be happening other places. And then I, at the time, was working in Oklahoma covering college sports and got the opportunity to move to Cleveland and cover 180 high schools. And I just fell in love with high school athletics. Secondary athletic trainers, oh my gosh, I had almost no extra time. I blinked and I spent 18 months there, but I loved it. I loved the love of everything at that level. And so that's what got me into really reporting more on high schools, right? And then I moved to Houston. And like I said, I love all things Texas-based. That's literally where this project is kind of really, I started digging in and asking more questions about why aren't athletic trainers on the sidelines? Why aren't there cold tubs that are mandated at Houston ISD? What is going on here? What about the health and safety? And when I had left Cleveland, I had just done a story, a project, my very first project about health and safety of athletes. And it was about concussions, because at the time they were a hot button topic. It was back in 2013. And my big story was it's the new back to school craze was about concussions. And so I just started dabbling more in the health and safety of athletes. And in Houston, I really pivoted more onto it and started working on a project. It was flooded by Hurricane Harvey. It never saw the light of day. And so I moved to Cincinnati and was never going to say anything about it. And I was actually looking about Narcan in schools and was just Googling around, trying to see if any local schools had it, and came across a presentation that an athletic trainer had done about how it's a new tool in a tool belt at a local athletic trainer. And so I called her up and was like, hey, do you know of any schools who have Narcan in their packs? And she's like, no, actually, it's so new. Nobody really does yet. But did you know that not every high school has an athletic trainer? And I was like, do I know this? I could talk about this for hours. And so we just started talking, and she was like, well, the athletes on Friday night, football players, are going to wear helmet decals for athletic trainers to show that there aren't enough. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. And so I pitched it as a Friday Night Lights kind of idea in one of our morning meetings. As journalists, we usually have morning meetings to talk about our stories for the day. I pitched it in that morning meeting. I was like, hey, I think it's a good Friday Night Lights kind of story. And they're like, why do you seem to know so much about this? And I kind of briefly told them I tried a project on it once. And they're like, we should talk to the news director about this. So I went in and I told him what I knew about it. And he said, well, send me, a couple story ideas. And I sent him 15. And 3 years later, my special projects photographer, Eric, and I had turned close to 200 stories on it. And in that time, Matthew Mangine Jr. collapsed and died in Northern Kentucky. And his death changed my whole career in more ways than I could ever probably say in this podcast. There were so many times where we could have just stopped or just thought, wow, this is so sad. But Eric and I just made this really great team in continuing to push and saying no, we should really look at this. So that's kind of what led me to Louisville and doing Safer Sidelines.
Wow. Okay. No, I actually love that, because I love the fact that it started from Houston, and you bring up Harvey, where I was working as a graduate assistant in Louisiana, and I had gone down to the Houston area after Harvey hit, bringing supplies, all that, because that's where I'm from. I'm from 2 hours north of Houston. So that stuff was devastating to me. And then, you talk about just knowing when you were in high school, hearing the story of a high school athlete that died. And then I had the same thing when I was in high school, ours wasn't heat related, but we had a local athlete who I didn't know personally, but it was in the town over, who died by lightning. And so it was like, oh God, we got to make sure we have lightning policies and we have weather policies. And so that became a big thing. But in that whole weather policy, nobody ever really took into account heat, because it's Texas and it just gets hot and you get used to it. And so it's kind of like nice to see that it wasn't, I mean, not that this is gonna sound bad, but like, not that it was just Kentucky that got you there, something close to me, like Texas, and that's what kind of spurred the whole nationwide thing. So that's awesome. I love the fact that you're not an athletic trainer, but you're just as passionate about athletes' health as we are. So there's hope for us yet. Okay.
Absolutely.
So next question I have for you is, so we know that your story, I mean, it's gone nationwide, and to be quite regularly on social media, it's pretty much gone like viral. It's gone global now. People are commenting from not just athletic trainers, but doctors, parents, coaches, administrators, thankfully, it's getting recognized. I mean, one doctor, Ohio State University said it's the best and most impactful series he's seen highlighting these risks of these athletes' health and safety. And so I want to know for you, like, in doing this story, what is Safer Sidelines project from your point of view? So if you were to go around telling somebody what this 4-part series is, how do you describe it in your own words?
It's a broken system.
Great. That is a great explanation right there. I love it. 2 words. It's a broken system. That's great.
Yeah, it's something that has the information out there. It's readily available. It has decades of research behind it and science. It has a whole industry, right? Y'all, the reason I report on you guys so much is y'all are the literal intersection of health and safety and sports. And like, I don't think people realize that that exists. We talk about those 2 subjects individually. And yeah, we talk about sports medicine, but we don't really talk about it at the high school level, right? Unless we're in it, unless we have kids in it, or we work in it, or we're the journalists of it, like, we just don't talk about it. But all the parts to make that system work are clearly possible. It's possible at the NFL level, it's possible at the Division I level. And the difference is money, right? But the reality is sure, it's not so much how are we going to pay for it, how are we going to maybe reallocate what we already spend to shift to health and safety. As Doug Costa talks about of the Corey Stringer Institute, lots of times when he's talking with administrators, he's kind of telling them, like, you talk about having athletics, but health and safety is right there with it. Like, you can't talk about the one without the other. Like, you're funding the one, but you need to fund the other. He says it all the time. 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., you have everything in place. 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., where did it go? When did it change from these kids being your students to, okay, we'll use the term student athletes? Like, but they're still the students, right? And they're still on school property, and they're still need to be protected. And even take away when they're not on school and they're just on youth leagues, like, what's going on there? You have to pay to join those. So where are the funds there? And that's what Dr. Costa talks a lot about. It's not a money issue. It's an allocation issue.
No, that's, oh my gosh. So that is one of the reasons I actually left the high school setting was the money issue. We asked for, and we'll touch on it in just a second, but we asked for this equipment and this emergency medical, AEDs and cold tubs and things that we as athletic trainers know need to happen. But then, there's not enough money for that. Or in my case, hey, I need help because there's one of me and 600 athletes and I can't be everywhere at once. Oh, well, there's not enough money for that. But the science department can get new computers for that 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. They're there, but we're not taking care of these students that are our responsibility, or, in the case of administrators, they're your responsibility when they're still on that campus, they're still on that bus, they're still at, the visiting team's football field or basketball court from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. or whatever time game that ends. And it's disheartening to hear. And I'm sure when you were going through this with administrators as well, we don't have the money for that, or we don't have the funds for that. And it's kind of a question of, well, what is an athlete or even just a person's life worth to you? I mean, I know, like, a cold tub. if you get a good one, you're looking at maybe a couple $100, an AD, a couple $1,000. Okay. But that's not servicing just one person. That's servicing your entire, athletic department, your entire school district, depending on the size of the school. And so you're looking at, I'm just going to go top end here, $8,000 for this emergency equipment. Is one life not worth that? Or, 600 lives, or you had hundreds in your 4-part series that you did. And it comes down to how much was each one of those lives worth. And it's sad to think that administrators and coaches, or, those league officials of those youth leagues can say that it's not worth it to have this. They'll be fine until they're not. And then you look back, well, we did everything we could do to say, but did you really?
I think there's a little bit of this. Sorry. I think there's a little bit of this too. Like, you see a mass shooting happen, right? And it's sad and you can't believe it. And you also still believe that it won't happen to you. And it's not so much, I think, anymore. The more I keep doing it and reporting on it and pointing at it, I think it's not so much that people don't think that it's not worth the life. I think they just truly don't think that it will happen. And that's why parents keep saying it's not a matter of if, but when. That when may be a high school athlete, or it may be the referee, or it may be the fan in the stand, or it may be, heck, I just wrote that story out of Northern Kentucky where the athletic trainer, Mike Quinn, trained his coaches on CPR and it saved his own life.
Yes.
Right? You never know who it's going to be. It could be the administrators, the athletic directors. You don't know who it's going to be. But with something like cardiac arrest, why are we so reactive instead of proactive? Especially when we have a tool, like Dr. Costa says, you use it and it's meant to save a life. That's what it's designed to do. You don't even have to push the button now on new ones, right? So this is why I'm saying the broken system. We know all the parts of it. We just kind of I like to say that we like to be willfully blind toward it. We just like to think that, not us.
No, and that's 100% correct. And I think kind of going into I didn't have this question on the sheet, but now that you bring it up, being that blind, it won't happen to us until it does kind of happen. I know as athletic trainers, we think about the worst case scenario. We write those emergency action plans. We think, what is the worst possible thing that can happen? What are we going to do for that, right? And I know some of these schools that you interviewed and you talked to their administrators, they didn't have athletic trainers, or they didn't have anybody that's employed to be that role. So when you were going through and you were interviewing these, schools, do you have an emergency action plan? Do you have this in place, that in place? What was the reaction from some of those schools? Because I know when I tried to push things like that through the system, we kind of get pushback or something like that. But when a reporter, an outside person with the media comes through, they're going to react totally different than how they would react to me or, the local college AT reaching out. So what were some things that you heard or were said to you?
Oh man, there's a large range of things. So some reactions were, here's the record. Some were, why do you want this? Some were, what are you talking about? I had a superintendent call me and say, is this really the law? This is the second time I requested these. So this time around, athletic directors kind of knew a little bit more. They're like, oh, she requested this last year, but I didn't do anything with it the previous year. I just wasn't able to get to it with all the other stories that we were doing. And anyways, so this is the second time I requested them. And the first time I requested them, the very first day I sent it out, I didn't know this. You learn things after you send it. I guess I sent it on a day when all these administrators were together in the same room. So they all got my email request and they were like, first off, is this spam? Secondly, my last name is not that easy. So they definitely thought it was spam. And then I just got flooded with phone calls. I had 40 phone calls. But my probably thing that lasts with me the most about this record request is kind of what you alluded to. You guys make these EAPs, you write them, and then your athletic directors look over them, right?
Right.
So I was out on a story one day with Eric, and we were at a school in Kentucky, and the athletic trainer walked up to me because I had just taken a photo of the EAP hanging on the wall, and I was going to use it like as an example. And they said, "Wow, like, thank you so much." And I was like, "For what?" And they were like, "For requesting my venue specific EAPs." And I said, "You're welcome. I actually didn't send you the request. How do you know that?" And they said, "Because my athletic director and my superintendent freaked out, and they started calling me, asking me, where is this document? Can we see this document? We need to have a meeting about this document." And they responded, "Yeah, we can have a meeting. This is the meeting I've been trying to schedule with you for 8 months."
Oh my goodness.
And so that was a big journalism moment for me when I realized, like, sometimes it takes somebody just asking to hold people accountable. And if anybody can walk away with something from all of this, parents, administrators, athletic trainers, anybody, it's that sometimes just asking the question is what holds the other people accountable and makes change. And for that one school, it made change. Right? Change that we're never going to know about or see about or hear about, other than that little interaction right there that I still carry with me on days when I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can go through all these records. I don't know if I want to organize anymore. Like, I don't know. And then I remember it matters, and it's going to help these kids stay safe. So, like, go through the emails, hit send, organize it all, keep it on track, because it matters.
I love that you say that, because that poor athletic trainer, I've been in the same boat they have, but like my stakeholder was different. So mine were, and a lot of other athletic trainers can attest to this too, but it was the parent. So I had a parent who asked for, I think it was some modality or something that I had been at, simple like modality that I've been asking for. And they're like, well, we had it at the school that we were playing away, and why don't we have it here? And then my AD's like, why did you never? I was like, go back 6 months and look at these emails I've been sending you. Look at the order request I've been asking for. There it is. So speaking of those other stakeholders, so you mentioned, the superintendent and the principal and stuff and the AD, but I think our biggest one are probably the parents. I mean, we are talking about their children, their child here, whether it's college or professional or youth sports. I mean, it is their child's. What are some things you learning outside? I mean, I know I can preach all day long. A parent should be asking these questions and should be saying this and should be going to these meetings and doing, but being outside of that athletic department, being outside of that medical facility, what are some things you think parents need to be talking about, asking questions on, doing to save their lives or protect their children?
It's such a good question.
I asked the hard-hitting stuff.
Okay, ask it one more time.
Okay.
Because my brain went 20 different ways when you asked it the first time.
You are totally fine, and answer it any way you want to. So being outside of athletic training and medical, so you just being the journalist that you are, and then just being a member of your community, if you were a parent, what are some things you think that parents should be asking of the schools, of their youth leagues, or whatever, organization that their kids are in, about how things that organization or that school need to have to protect their children? What are like your top 5 things they should ask? I love when I do this. I love when I stump people. It just means I just did a great job.
It's more like, I can't boil it down to 5 things. Mr. Mangine said this, Matthew Mangine Jr.'s dad, said what parents should know is that what happened to Damar Hamlin is the best case scenario. And that's not what's offered at your school. Nothing close to it. No way. No way you have that many medical professionals on your sideline, that many life-saving devices, and that many times of probably going through a rehearsal for most schools with that many people going through it. It's just not. And so while the feel-good side of us likes to believe in this miracle that he survived, and holy heck, we all know a lot of things had to go right. One of the stories that got me into the health and safety of athletes in Houston was a youth baseball player who got hit in the heart with a line drive had commotio cordis, fell on the mound. His dad ran out to him, was screaming, "Don't take my baby, don't take my baby." And he is the rare case, doctors do not know how many times this has happened, that his heart reset itself while in commotio cordis and he lived. And it's, I think, like 7 or 8 years ago, like this month, that this happened. And I wrote a story about it. So it's to say that it happened. Like, parents need to know that if you want the best case scenario for your kids' health and safety, you need to be asking a whole lot of questions. And you have to be the first one to be asking for accountability in this, because who can put pressure on for a new superintendent? It's parents walking into a school board meeting and saying, "We want a new superintendent." So if enough parents go to a school board meeting and say, "We're not letting our kids play unless you have AEDs and cold tubs, and we want our PTAs to find ways to fund it, or our booster clubs to fund it, or we're going to fund it, or we're going to have $1 sports fee this year so we can cover the cost." Anything. There's so many ways you can. I used to have a friend who used to say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Okay, this is a massive elephant, and we're going to take it one bite at a time. And that, where you start, up to you. But there's lots of ways to fix the broken system, and it just depends on what is right for your school. Because we all learned in COVID, what is right for one school and works at one school does not work necessarily at another, which is why mandates are hard. And I understand that. It gets explained to me a lot because I ask all the time, why is this not mandated? Why is this not mandated? Okay, that's fine. I not mandate everything because schools can't do it. There's not enough money for it. Fine. But how do we solve this problem so it's no longer broken? That's what parents need to know. This is a problem that can be fixed. This is a problem that doesn't need to exist. This is a problem that has steps that we can take, that people all over know, that there are gold standards, that there are people that are willing to help solve. But it is not just an athletic director problem, a superintendent problem, an athletic trainer problem, an athlete problem, or a parent problem. It's an everybody problem, and everybody needs to come to the table at whatever school and figure it out and say, this is how we solve it.
I mean, there's a saying, I don't even know who started it, but it goes around Twitter and it goes around social media now, that basically says, if you can't afford an athletic trainer, and let's just amend that to, if you can't afford an athletic trainer and the emergency equipment and emergency action plans to go along with it, then you can't afford to have athletics, whether that's a youth sports league, whether that's your small rural high school or your 5A Texas high school. I mean, you can't have these equipments that, we've been discussing. You need these AEDs, you need these, CPR training for all coaches and anybody that's at a sporting event. You need to have somebody who can distinguish between an emergency event and a non-emergency event, i.e. an athletic trainer. Preferably have EMS on the side. Like, you need all these things. And if you can't do it and you can't mandate to have it, then you can't have athletics. And just like you said, parents need to take that step of, you're not going to provide it. I'm not going to let my child play. You get enough of those, and then you don't have an athletic program, and bam, the saying just came true. You don't have athletics anymore because you didn't have this one or two things that you didn't have. So I think you hit the nail on the head right then and there, and we've been fighting for that. And I think the Damar Hamlin situation, and at least from my perspective, not only was it great in terms of athletic, I mean, it wasn't great at all, but it was great in promoting athletic training and promoting the profession. But then when your story came out, I think we're still living on that high of the Damar Hamlin success, and he survived, and he was at the awards and he spoke about it, and we're still riding that high. And then you come in with your story and you're like, look what's happening at lower levels. Damar Hamlin was great. He survived. He had 27 people there saving his life. He had a hospital, but look at these hundreds of other children who didn't have that. And I think, honestly, had the Damar Hamlin situation not happened, or even a year ago when the soccer player who almost died, had none of that happened, I don't think it would have had as much emotional connection. I still think athletic trainers would have been promoting it, parents and some lawmakers, but I don't think it would have gotten, as high as it did in the Kentucky state. And like all these laws that are now trying to be written and trying to be passed, I don't think would have gotten as much traction as they do now, because this NFL player almost died. But now all of these children did die. Like it, almost, they did die, and they could have ended up just like him. It doesn't take 27 people. It takes one person, one AED, and somebody trained to know how to use it is all it takes. So taking this project that you did, I mean, it was no small feat in any way. I can't imagine all of the paperwork and the phone calls and just the time spent at a computer and just sorting through things it took you to write this. But would you ever consider expanding this project? Obviously not just you, like getting, journalists from other states and other areas to help you. But do you think this is something that needs to be truly explored state by state or region by region?
Absolutely. It is not just a Kentucky problem. Like Safer Sidelines says, it's not a Kentucky problem. It's not a Midwest problem. It's not a small city or a big city problem. Louisville, Kentucky, and this project that I did here is a microcosm of a national issue. When you're just talking, what it made me think of? That question where the people ask you, like, famous person who's dead, would you want to have like dinner with or whatever? Mine would be Corey Stringer. Because I would want to sit here, because from everything I know about him for, 8 years of reporting on this and talking to his wife and talking to his family members and talking to teammates who used to know him, he was so intelligent. And I just wonder, 20 years, 22 years down the line, in a Damar Hamlin incident, what he would have to say about what we've actually done about the problem.
That's a really good point. And bringing that up also made me think of today. So we're recording this on June 14th, right? And that actually makes today the 5th year anniversary of Jordan McNair. So the Maryland football player who passed away as well. Today's marks 5 years since that happened. And I think that's the one that got me. I mean, I was already a practicing athletic trainer. Like, I knew this stuff was going on, but McNair's story is the one that just brought it to the mainstream. I mean, like Corey Stringer, us in the medical community, we know about Corey Stringer. We know about the Corey Stringer Institute. And people, when he did die, know about it. They remember it. It was a big story. And I think the Jordan McNair is our late 2020s version of Corey Stringer. And just to see the changes that even the Jordan McNair Foundation is doing, they're donating cold tubs to high schools that claim they can't afford it. So you can't afford a $100, tub from Tractor Supply. Okay, here's an inflatable pool and here's how to do it. And not only that, so yeah, they're giving you the pools. Corey Stringer does this as well. They educate people on, what heat illness is, how to recognize it, what are the signs, what are the symptoms, and then how do we treat it? So obviously we're treating it, cold therapy before going to, EMS and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's more important than the necessarily giving out the equipment. I mean, yes, places need that. But if you can educate them, you can tell them about the Corey Stringer. This guy was super smart. He's a football player. Like this and this. This should have never happened to him, and look, it happened to him. And then look, it happened again and again and again. And again, somewhere the education was falling through. And it's not just the coaches that need it. It's not just the athletic trainers. I mean, I know athletic training, we preach it, we know it, we live it every single day. We preach it to our coaches. We get hopefully annual trainings to our coaches. Even our administrators are getting it from us. But it's that everyday Joe who needs to know that people my age, I'm going to have kids in the future. I need to be aware of this if I'm going to let them play sports. I live in Texas. I live in El Paso right now. It's 100 degrees. I need to be aware that I'm sending my kid to a camp this weekend for soccer or for baseball or for lacrosse or whatever. Is there an athletic trainer? Is there a cold tub available? How are you going to cool them down? How am I going to be alerted if, they have this, and this? What are some signs I need to be aware of when I pick up my kid? Because I can tell you right now, so many times athletic trainers even forget to tell the parents that. They'll tell the kid, but how is the kid supposed to tell the parent if they're going into rhabdomyolysis or they pass out because of heat illness? Oh, hey, mom and dad, you're supposed to look out for these signs, by the way. No, I'm experiencing it right now. So we think that's something else, is that the education part of it that I think we need to do more of. We don't just need to say, look at this. Your article did that for us. Look at this, read this, see what's happening. How do we fix it? And that's not necessarily a you problem. That's not a me problem, but somebody out there, we need to be educating. I mean, we know how important CPR is. I mean, everybody knows how important it is. Now we're pushing it. do CPR. Damar Hamlin, everybody should be CPR certified. But now we need to know the signs and symptoms of heat illness. We need to know the signs and symptoms of commotio cordis because, sudden cardiac arrest. We know to wash our hands. We know if we get sick, you wash your hands. That's how you, transmit diseases and things. It should be that commonplace. And it's so sad that it's not.
That's what Mr. Mangine says. That he says, you're only as good as your training and your education. So it's great to have an AED, but if you're not trained and educated on where it is and how to use it, what does that help? And then the other thing you brought up for me when you were saying everything was Mr. McNair. One of the first times I interviewed him said something that still sticks with me, which is, we asked ourselves how we sent a healthy kid to football practice on Tuesday, and he was on dialysis and awaiting, all this stuff on Thursday. And that's, I think, what doesn't hit home for everyone is just like the magnitude that it can so quickly change so fast, right? We talk, and I've said this before, but like you send your kids to play a game. It's like the very essence of being a child. Go play a game, right? And so we have this like safety, this false sense of safety with it. Like, oh, they just went and played a game, right? They're just at practice. They're playing a game. They've done that a million times in our backyard or with friends or throughout their years or whatever. And man, about a month ago, a monument was unveiled for Star Afacho, who died 6 years ago. And I was standing with Star's mom, Peace, and Matthew Mangine's mom, Kim. And both of them said the same thing. It was just a normal day, just another day. And that's what people don't understand. It will just be another day. It was a Monday night football game. It's as American as you get.
And I know athletic trainers, again, I've said it multiple times. We know this, we're trained in it, we do it. But it's not till you see it that yes, you read about it, you hear about it, all these tragic stories. But I know in my case, like, hearing about Jordan McNair, I knew it. But it wasn't until like August of 2021 when I actually had my own like true experience with it. So I've had an athlete pass away from heat exhaustion, but I wasn't there. Like I was there, but he wasn't there. Like I dealt him, but then I passed him off to EMS hospital, didn't make it. But I wasn't like there. It's still tragic, it was still hard. But in August of 2021, I had my own where I was literally talking to our quarterback, joking around with him. He's one of my student trainers, great kid. And then I literally go walk off to go tell the coach, hey, like it's unsafe to be out here. Like, our wet bulb globe is going off. Like we need to get out off the field. And within 60 seconds, they're screaming for me because the quarterback I was literally just talking to was perfectly fine. I mean, was coherent, no problems, joking around with me, was wheezing and barely able to stand up. And then less than 3 minutes later, he's in a cold bath, passed out. And I have a student trainer on the phone, like, you got 10 seconds before you're about to dial 911 and we're getting EMS out here. And thank God we had the cold tub set up. The AED was sitting right next, I grabbed it and ran with it, and it was sitting right next to the tub. And my coaches are all trained in CPR. My student trainers are trained in CPR. So if I need them to assist me in any way, they can do it. And from the moment I talked to that kid, walked off and said, hey, I'll be right back. I'm going to go talk to the coach. From that time to the time that, he woke up from being unconscious was less than 5 minutes. It's that span. Could have never woken up from that. I mean, he could have died from that. And that was less than 5 minutes. And I think people just don't understand. They're like, oh, it's, it spreads out. You have sudden cardiac arrest, Damar Hamlin. It happens in an instant. You're upright and you're down dead until your heart starts again. But it also can spread out. I mean, it can be as fast as 5 minutes. But then I think it's not educated enough. Just like, the parents have said, they went to school, they sent them, they were perfectly healthy. But by that night, by the next day, even that's 24-hour span, 48-hour span is when they started feeling it, is when they were no longer here. And so I think we just have to educate on all the different ways. It can be as fast as sudden cardiac arrest and commotio cordis, or it can be as slow as rhabdomyolysis and heat illness in that 48-hour span. And we just need to push it and just get it out there. And it's not. And it's so sad. Being from the Southwest, the Southeast, you would think we would know about it. And we don't. We're just, oh, it's hot. It's fine. We'll be okay. And so definitely think the education of it is the next step at least in our terms, like as far as athletic trainers, we should be educating. But for you in this story, what's next for you? So it's been published, it's been out there. I know you've been interviewed by a bunch of people for your, other news media is taking your story and pushing it out there. So what's next for you? What are you looking at next?
Safer Sidelines has been a part of my life in some way for about 8 years. And I don't know how I go 8 years and then 8 years past that and 8 years past that without it still being in my life. I can't say exactly in this very moment, this is what I'm doing next with it. I'm not sure. I think because I held on to it so tight for so long, there's a large part of me that doesn't believe that it's like, it's almost weird. Not to be having a conversation with another athletic trainer. I've done that a lot. But about all of it, like about Safer Sidelines, right? Like it's to like coworkers, right? I had a coworker walk up to me and tell me like her son's doing a youth baseball league this summer. And she went and asked them, when do you call practice or games? And they said, when the heat index is 100 degrees or above. She said, okay, how will I know when that is? They said, well, you can find us. We'll be on the edge of the field under the white tent. They'll be protected from the sun. She said, well, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know if I don't know. She said, my 7-year-old will not be there then those days. And it's moments like that where I'm like, holy cow, like go you, right? And then I'm like, oh yeah, it's because she got educated on it. She had no idea before. And so what's next is finding out ways to empower parents with it and to keep pushing the story out. There's a part of me as journalists, we can be kind of competitive, right? We have a deadline that we have to meet. We want that source. We want that story. We want to tell that. And I have to keep stepping back and remembering like, I want everybody else to report on this. Stand by me, report on it. So one of the things that I've been talking about with some of my editors is doing a meeting, a virtual meeting, I guess, with other journalists in our network. So I work for the Louisville Courier Journal. It is a part of the USA Today network. And we have papers throughout the country and many communities that are smaller than Louisville. And that was what I had hoped for and quit jobs over and cried over and begged for so long, was like, this is a local national story. It's local because it's happening where I was in Cincinnati and in Louisville, right? But it's a national story. So how do I take it local, national? And then the Courier Journal came calling out of nowhere. And we talked for a really long time before I moved. And I quit the industry completely while I was talking to them, didn't tell them because I was like, I don't really know. I don't know if I can keep doing this. And my answer has always come back to it's the only thing I want to do. When I had a really hard time, athletic trainers know, right, through my Twitter, I had a really hard time there for a while. Living in that database was horrible. The day I finally shared it with a small trusted group of athletic trainers, I literally said to them, my gosh, you guys, I feel lighter. I didn't realize what I was holding on to until I let a piece of it go. So there was a long time for a few months there where I just was not good. And I had these pieces sitting in front of me that I needed to write, and I didn't know how I was going to write them. And all this stuff was happening with Damar Hamlin, right? And what's the closest family that died of sudden cardiac arrest to Damar Hamlin? Well, there is one in Cincinnati, but the other one is the Man Jeans. And I live in Kentucky. I report for a Kentucky newspaper. So I was calling Man Jeans, right? And I kind of threw their story into an even larger national spotlight after Damar's collapse. So Mr. Mangine and I were talking a lot, and I kept telling him, he's like, we're going to DC. And I was like, oh my gosh, get in a bubble, please. Like, I can't keep up. I'm trying to produce this massive project. Damar put us on warp speed, but it was great, right? But I was having a really hard time keeping up with all of it, doing all of it. And I was struggling one day, and Matt asked me, how's it going? And I said, it's not going well. I'm literally staring at a blank screen right now. And he said, do you want to know what I do when I have a speech or something that I need to do that's coming up? And I said, what? You better not say envision everybody in their underwear, because it's just like, doesn't help with a journalist, right? You're staring at a blank screen. And he said, no, I remember that Matt isn't here anymore, right? That's his reality. His son is not here anymore. So there's a couple of people who can say something for Matt. And so he said these 3 words, and they're literally they follow me everywhere, but currently they're taped to my computer screen. And they were speak for him. And so that's what I do. I speak for them. I give a voice to the voiceless, right? That's what journalists do. We hold the powerful accountable and give a voice to the voiceless. And in my case, that means speaking for athletes like Matthew Mangine Jr. And Lord, every day I hope I do justice by it. That's all I hope for, is that we don't have to have more Matthew Mangine Jr.'s, that we have to cover their parents' grief through their foundation event, which is incredible. And also just, there's this paradox that I still can't come to terms with it. It's heartbreaking and breathtaking at the same time, the way that these parents, in so many cases, are moving forward in their grief process by honoring their child, by saying, no, not your child. It was my child, but not your child. There's just something in it that I can't do.
The way you said that you're the voice for those that don't have one, because as athletic trainers, the one thing we say is we're the advocate for our student athletes. We're the voice for our athletes who don't have one. We advocate for them. So this is where I think I really, really enjoyed all the work that I've been following you since the whole start of this project, and you announced you're putting it out. And, I joined the group of athletic trainers that you send out emails and we're asking for, and I send you stories when I see them. And I did that because we talk about collaboration all the time. And I know you guys have that in journalism too. Like, you have your different professions that collaborate and your sources and things like that. And in the medical community, it's us, it's team doctors, it's EMTs, it's our sports medicine team that we have. But we never think that, like, the sports medicine team, the athletic trainers, and then a local, media, whether that's newspaper, whether that's, the TV media or social media now, since it's so big, we can collaborate together. So, we're advocating on the one end, you guys are advocating, and then we come together, just like what happened with the whole Damar Hamlin situation. And look how much that blew up. Just the need for athletic trainers, I feel like, has grown 5 times since then. Everybody needs an athletic trainer now, because look what happened. An athletic trainer saved the life of this NFL athlete. But it's like, yeah, but where was that 20 years ago? Where was that 15 years ago? Where was that 3 years ago when an athlete died? We're being reactive, which is the only way we can be now. We can't go back in time and change it, unfortunately. As much as I hate, seeing those stories that pop up on my Twitter or pop up in my email of, this athlete. I just got one not that long ago that, died. And every time it breaks my heart just a little bit more, because it's like, us as athletic trainers, we are pushing it and we're pushing it and we're pushing it, but people don't even know who we are and what we do. So when we say you need an athletic trainer, this is why you need an athletic trainer. Okay, cool. What's an athletic trainer? But then when somebody puts out, this huge story like this, and it goes viral, and it touches all these people, and then you explain what an athletic trainer is in such layman terms that when you're not going in depth, this is just a healthcare provider that, can save your athlete's life. Okay, cool. Great. That's kind of all a parent needs to know. If they want to get more involved, they can look it up. They can do their thing. We don't need to get as technical as us athletic trainers do. And I'm one of them. But I think I love how you point out that's what keeps you going, because it's the same thing with me. I don't want to be an athletic trainer a year and a half ago. I was like, F this profession, and I don't want to do this. But then I saw the stories, and I'm like, I saw what happened when I left that high school and how they don't have an athletic trainer still. And I moved to El Paso, and there's all these athletic trainers here, but now I'm working with soldiers, and they tell me these horror stories of when they were in high school, when they were in college, and nobody was there for them, or, nobody was there for them when they're on deployment and things like. It's like, this is why I'm here. It's not, I don't do it for me. I'm doing it for them. I'm doing it to advocate for them, so then they can spread the word, and it just continues on and on and on. And I think that's what happened with your story. Whether Damar Hamlin would have, gone unconscious or not, I think this would have still blown up, just not on as big of a scale as it did and as fast as it did. But I think it still would have been a topic of discussion. It's just, thankfully, it's gotten more hits and more clicks than it would have, and for the better, unfortunately. I mean, we always talk about it takes a tragic event. Same with mass shootings. It takes a tragic event to point out the flaws or the things that don't exist. And in the case of Damar Hamlin, they pointed out everything that went right, everything that could go right, did go right. Your story did the opposite. Everything that can go wrong did go wrong in all of these situations because things weren't set in place. Damar Hamlin had it and they went over it, and he was the best case scenario. Here's the worst case scenario. So I think this is the last question I have for you, because obviously this is an athletic training podcast, so we got to talk about athletic training. But in the process of this whole story, so before you started the 4-part series, Safer Sidelines, to now, what did you know about athletic training, or what did you learn about athletic trainers that you wish everyone would know? So you didn't know it before the story. Now you know it now, having talked to us, interacted with us, learned about us. You want everybody in the country to know it. What would be that one thing?
The sports industry is a cutthroat business. It's all about competition. And in the middle of all of the wins and losses and competition and grow and gain strength and get better and this and that, you have athletic trainers who just want to help. They literally just want to help. And let me be clear, when I say speak for him, I get to do so because of all of y'all. And let me be clear too. Safer Sidelines is what it is, and I love how excited you are about it. It is what it is because of you and because of athletic trainers like you all across the country, who every time I have picked up the phone and called have said, yeah, you can be here for an interview in 5 minutes. Yeah, what are you looking for? Yeah, let me send that to you. Here's exactly where it is. Sure, let me explain this thing I've already explained to you 7 times, but you have an even more technical question. Literally never been so helped in my career. And that's the thing that I think is the hidden secret that I'm almost scared to share with other journalists. Sure, come cover this with me, but don't take my secret that literally the best people to talk to are the athletic trainers, because they will help you. They won't just, give you a stat or tell you, yeah, that player's fine. He's totally fine. They will help you. And Safer Sidelines is what it is today, only because for the last 8 years, every time I've asked, I have been helped by an athletic trainer.
I mean, it always just, that's one of the things I love about what I do now. So between the podcast and doing all the speaking that I do now is hearing from people that aren't in the athletic training community, talk about athletic trainers, because I can harp on every athletic trainer I've ever met, and I can talk about this profession until, I turn blue in the face, and how much I love it, but also how much, it's a problem, and I can just go on and on and on for days. But then when you get somebody who, it's as simple as the parents who, I still get phone calls from athletes' parents that, thank you for what you did 2 years ago. If it wasn't for you, my kid wouldn't be walking down the aisle. I have one athlete who, he wouldn't be walking down the aisle because you're the only one who could figure out what was wrong with his knee. Or, I have another one that's, the parents are like, thank you for everything you did for my my son, because he's so much happier since, he got to hang out in your training room. Or it's things like that. Or the simple, just thank you. Just thank you from the athletes or from my patients now. Just thank you for being you. And every time it just brings a tear to my eye. And it's just oh, thanks, I'm going to cry. Thanks, I ruined my makeup. But, so I do have a question from an athletic trainer, and it's a little bit personal. So feel free to not answer if you don't want to. But he asked, doing this whole project, so this is 8 years worth of everything. What was your favorite moment? What is one thing that stands above everything else that you remember, that if you never did another story on this ever again, what would be the highlight, I guess I would say, of this whole thing? What is the highlight of all 8 years of this?
Man, I'm trying to think back through 8 years of amazing. I know what it is. I never publicly give them probably enough credit, but the Mangine family had every right to never talk to me again. So the story goes like this. Matthew collapsed and died in June. In October, I'm an investigative reporter, right? And I know at this point, there's what records come out of an athlete dying. I requested Matthew's autopsy, toxicology, and coroner's report, which take a human to body parts and words on a page and science. And not that I did anything wrong, right? I'm doing that. It's part of my job is, as much as I've told this story once to a group of moms, and the one mom's look on her face was like, you did what? And I think it was in that moment that I realized how much I've never really given the Manjeans credit for ever allowing me to like tell their son's story, because them being willing to talk with me helps me report on it, right? So yeah, I requested these records, and Northern Kentucky is a small city, essentially. Everybody knows everybody. So of course, the department that I requested it from knew the Manjeans. And they called him up and said, there's a reporter requesting this. And look, it's a public record, and under the law, it's obtainable through an open records request. And I wasn't doing anything wrong. But they called me at one point and said, why do you want these records? And I said, because I've done this before, and everybody rushes to call it a tragedy. And I don't think that that's the only reason. So I just wanted to see, I'm going to explore every single angle about what happened to your son's death. So we started requesting things. We requested body camera footage that showed what happened that night and what didn't happen. We requested the 911 call. We requested the run of the EMS unit, which showed that the 911 call was made and when the EMS arrived, and that it was at least 12 minutes before something was applied. So getting his toxicology, coroner report, all of that told me it wasn't something in his system, right? There was no drugs in his system or anything like that. It helped I wasn't there that night. None of us, most of us were not. Unfortunately, his mother was, and she was not talking about it for a long time. And they couldn't talk about it. They were in a lawsuit. So yeah, it's that the Manjean family has, to this day, allowed me to ask them really hard questions in the middle of the worst thing in their lives. So
I literally I can't imagine, like, to be in their position and then to have somebody who doesn't know them, doesn't know their kid, and just like you said, is requesting all this really personal stuff, and and you don't know why, and then you're in the middle of the lawsuit. I couldn't imagine. So you found that roughly 400 deaths in the last 20-ish years have occurred. In that whole time, that whole 8-year span, is there anything that you would change, that you would do again, wish you would have done, looking back on it now? Anything, or are you just happy with, are you happy with what you got and you wouldn't change a thing?
I think in the end, it all ended up the way it did for a reason. I think it flooded in Harvey because I didn't know enough then. And all we were going to report on was how athletic trainers could stop heat, because prevention wise, you technically can't stop a traumatic brain injury from happening, right? So we were only going to cover heat. So anyways, my point is, in Houston, I don't think I knew enough. So I think Harvey flooded it because I wasn't ready. And then I think I moved to Cincinnati. Man, I don't know why I moved to Cincinnati at first. I had no idea. And now it's because where else would I have lived, right? Like the Manjean family and I have talked about this. Like, we don't discuss anymore the question, like, why was it their family? Because it's literally the answer to that question. It doesn't exist, because it's really that it could have been no other family. And so with this being my passion, like, where else in the world should I have lived besides Cincinnati, which borders Northern Kentucky? Like, and then why not Louisville, right? So that's where Max Gilpin died, and in 2008. And I lived in Ohio, so I was able to connect with, my TV station was right down the road from his agent and his lawyer, and we were a couple hour drive away from his hometown. Like, where it all happened, as much as like the last 8 years, I was questioning probably way too much at times. Like, what am I doing? It all happened exactly for a reason.
I think it did. I think had you not had any of that kind of stuff, none of this, it wouldn't be as big of a topic as it is now. And it wouldn't have trickled down to the athletic trainers. It wouldn't have trickled down to parents. There wouldn't be laws that are currently being drafted in states to save these athletes. So I think it's the butterfly flag, that one little thing caused all of this. And I know us as athletic trainers, we are incredibly grateful for it. not for the events that happen, but for you covering it and putting a spotlight on it. So last thing I want to ask you, is there anything for any of the listeners out there that are going to be listening to this episode when it comes out, as far as athletic trainers, parents, administrators, anybody you want to focus on, or multiple people, that last things you want to say to them? And it can be advice, it can be something to do. Just what are your last words that you want to put out there as far as this story goes and this topic goes?
The name of the project is the name for a reason. I used to sign my emails to Safer Sidelines in the future. And my editor said, "Where'd you come up with that?" I said, "Well, isn't that what the reporting is all about? Is for Safer Sidelines in the future?" So it's that. It's how do we get to Safer Sidelines in the future? By an inch or a mile, by a zero cost policy or $1,000 AED, by reallocating funds or asking the hard questions. How do we get to Safer Sidelines in the future?
I think that's a great ending. I mean, I thought Safer Sidelines was the perfect topic for that. I mean, it's simple, it's short, but it states the message. Like, what are we all trying to do as far as athletic trainers, parents, coaches, everything? We're trying to make these games, these sports, as safe as we possibly can, while also still having fun and keeping those athletes on that field, or those students on that field. So I love it. And plus it's catchy, it works, and it's, works so many different ways. So it's awesome that that's what you're going to part with. But I really want to thank you for coming on. We didn't really talk so much about the article. I'm going to have it linked in our bio for this podcast so that they can go through. And I highly recommend anybody that is listening, or if you haven't read it, to read it. If you have read it, please reread it. It's always great to go back and refresh yourself, because there's so much information. I know it took me a week to read the whole thing because there's just so much. And honestly, I needed a break. It's so in depth, and it's so technical, but also so heartbreaking that you get to the story and then you got to stop, and you need to get away from the computer and come back to it because it's too much. But again, I'll have a link to that. So it's free now. You can go on and you can read it. It's great. It's wonderful. And then,
yeah, thanks to my editors who made it free finally, so we could all share it for educational purposes.
It was worth $1. It was worth $1 when I paid it. I would gladly have spent $20 to read that. And I know I shared it. And it's crazy to think that even I had some of my soldiers. So a lot of my soldiers that I work with know that I used to work in sports. And so I would have it up on my computer, like in between patients, reading it. And they would see it and they're like, "Oh, what's that about?" And then little did I know they're going back through and like skimming through and reading it. And it's because they have kids that are here, that are in El Paso. And these are people that, especially soldiers, they move around the whole country. So some of them aren't from this area. Some of them are from the Pacific Northwest and the Northeast. They don't deal with this kind of heat. And then they read it and they're like, "Oh, it's not just Texas. Like, I was worried about Texas and my child playing, sports this summer or in the fall, but it's not just here. Like, this is like in the Midwest." And I was like, yeah, see, that's the whole point. Like, this story is from Kentucky and, Cincinnati, Ohio area. Imagine the border of Texas and Mexico. Like, imagine how much worse it can be. And thankfully it's not, but that's just because we have athletic trainers here in this area.
Right. Corey Stringer died in Mankato, Minnesota. The last place you think somebody's going to die from heat.
Yes. Yeah. And if you look at it, and I know you've definitely done this, but you look at it statistically, yes, more the higher deaths are in that Southeast, Southwest, like the hotter regions. But when you look at it by like the number of people who are dying and then the people in that area, like the places that are up north actually have really high rates of this happening that you wouldn't think about. You're like, "Oh, it's Minnesota. Oh, it's Michigan. Oh, it's, this isn't." But look at them versus us. It's a big gap. You were like, "Oh, it's not just Georgia. It's not just Alabama. It's not just, New Mexico and Arizona. It's actually more of these places up north in the Midwest and things like that." Because they don't have the access that we, especially here in Texas, they don't have the access to athletic trainers there. Again, super thankful for you coming on. I hope this was informative to people who are listening, to give them a little bit more background on you and why you did this story and why this was such a passion project for you. I hope anybody, again, that's listening to this live or listening to this recording was able to take something away from this and can maybe take something that we talked about and educate their stakeholders or their community on just this topic in general. So If you'd like to get in on the action and be a part of another episode, make sure to follow us on all our social medias. I've stated at the beginning of this episode, but if you search us on Twitter and Instagram at debatable_show, we'll pop up. It's the one with the cartoon superhero logo. Make sure to participate in any polls, questions, and challenges, and then tag us in anything on hashtag AT Twitter. We're all about the hot topics, hot takes, and just give us an episode idea that you want to hear. Also, be on the lookout for calls for guests. We're trying to get more episodes pushed out. So we'd love to have all athletic trainers, all of AT Twitter. And just like this episode, we'd love to have special episodes of people joining us that are not athletic trainers or not in the sports medicine realm. So again, to keep this show going, we need you to spread the word. Make sure to leave a review on whatever service you're listening to us on, whether that's Apple, whether that's Spotify, Amazon, iHeartRadio. Make sure to share and retweet our social media posts. Just tell everyone you know to download and listen. And for those of you attending the National Athletic Trainer Conference next week in Indianapolis, make sure to hit us up. We will be having a social gathering that we'll be posting on Twitter. It's a surprise, so make sure you follow us and be on the lookout for that. We will have it on Wednesday of next week, so I think that's the 21st. We will be having a meet and greet, so be on the lookout for that. So on behalf of myself and Em, who is not a part of this episode tonight, thank you for listening, and remember that most things are debatable. And we're done.